All right, you are now in your independent practice box. Your first question says, which number below has a 4 that has a value of 1/1000th as much as the 4 in 5,460 and 13 thousandths? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the place value chart so that I can put that number inside of it. So of course we start with millions, hundred thousands, ten thousands, thousands, hundreds, tens, ones, decimal, tenth, hundredths, thousandths. Okay, drawing this out. Okay, so you should have a place value chart that looks like this in your independent practice box. If not, click pause and copy this down so that you can solve this problem. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the number, I'm going to write it below so we can see what we're working with. 5,460 and 13 hundredths. Now I'm going to take that number and place it in my place value chart, lining up my decimals. So it has a decimal, so my decimal goes in the decimals place, then the 1 right after it, and the 3 after that. Then I can move this way. 0, 6, 4, 5. Okay, so this reads 5,460 and 13 hundredths. And the question says, which number below has a 4 that is 1,000th as much as the 4 in this number? So I'm going to come to this 4. And the first thing I want to do is figure out what place value I'm looking for before I get to my answer choices. It says 1/1000th. So I know when I'm looking at this as a fraction, that means if it's a fraction, we divided, or that my answer is going to get smaller. So we must be moving in this general direction for it to get smaller. Now think of 1,000. 1,000 has 1, 2, 3 zeros. So it needs to make 3 jumps into the smaller places. So right now I'm in the hundreds place. 1 jump would be 1/10. 2 jumps would be 1/100th. 3 jumps skipping over the decimal would be 1/1000th. So when I get to my answer choices, I'm looking for an answer that has a 4 in the tenths place. Okay, decimal in the tenths place. So now I'm going to put my answer choices into a place value chart. I'm looking for one that has a 4 in the tenths place. You can drop your lines down and add those answer choice numbers into your place value. But since I added all of these notes while I was working, I'm going to put a separate place value chart underneath it for my answer choices. So give me 1 second. Million, 100,000, 10,000, 1,000, 100, 10, ones, decimal, tenth, hundredths, thousandths. And I underlined the tenths place on my place value chart because that's where I know my answer needs to be. I'm looking for a 4 in the tenths place. Okay. Now I'm going to take my answer choices and drop them in here. The first one, I'm going to line up my decimal, has a 2, then a 4 in the ones, an 8 in the tens, a 9 in the hundredths, 5 in the thousandths, and a 5 in the 10,000ths. Now that I've underlined this, I'm looking for a 4. A has a 2. So that's not the answer I'm looking for. It's not A. So I'm going to move to B. B, lining up my decimal, it has a 5 behind it, a 7 in the ones place, a 0 in the tens place, an 8 in the hundredths place, 4 in the thousands place, a 7 in the 10,000ths place. Again, I'm looking for a 4. It has a 5, so B's not it either, so I'm crossing those off. Moving to C. C, matching up my decimals. 4, 1 in the ones place, 9 in the tens place, 8 in the hundreds place, 2 in the thousands place, 3 in the 10,000ths place. Looking to the tenth still, it has a 4, so there's a 4 in the thousandths place, so I would choose C as my answer for number 1. Righty? Now moving to number 2. Number 2 says 4 students weighed their books. They recorded the results in the table below, and it gave you a table. Whose book weighed the most? Now I want you to pause. Whenever we see tables, what's the first thing that we need to do? We need to write that information in our notebooks. So off to the side, I want to know how much or whose book weighed the most. So in layman's terms, lowest means heaviest. So who had the heaviest book? And I'm going to copy the table. Okay, well it says Nathaniel, and his was 7.905. Ryan's 7.9095. Jackson 7.95. Michael 7.59. So now I've pulled all the information out of the problem I need. Now that I know I'm trying to compare numbers, the next thing I need to do is to put this into a place value chart so that I can figure out who has the most. So off to the side, I'm going to make a place value chart. But I'm looking at all of my numbers, and the largest place value I need is a 1. So I'm going to start with my ones place and go to my thousandths and my decimals to save space. So I'm going to make an O for 1, a decimal, a tenth, a hundredth, a thousandth. Okay. Now I'm going to drop all of these numbers in that order off to the side so that they kind of stay in that order. So first is Nathaniel. He had a decimal. Match up. So that makes 7 and 905 thousandths. I'm going to do that for everyone. Ryan, Jackson, Michael. Okay. These two last numbers have nothing over here. So if that bothers you, as a placeholder, you can add in zeros so that they all have the same digits and all kind of look pretty. Now I'm working with the most, or which one's the heaviest. So when I think heaviest, I think biggest. I'm going to start with my biggest place value, and I'm trying to figure out which one is the biggest. Well, when I look, 7777. So all of my ones are the same thing. So my ones are all even. I can't determine which one's the heaviest through the ones. So I'm going to jump to the next biggest place, which is the tenths place, and I'm going to look. A 9, a 0, a 9, and a 5. My two 9s are the largest. So I'm going to cross out the other numbers. So I'm done looking at them, and I'm only looking at these two because now they're tied. They both have a 7 and they both have a 9. So I'm going to jump to the next place value, which is the hundredths. The top one has a 0. The middle one has a 5. 5 is bigger than 0, so I'm going to go with this third number to be my largest number. My third person was Jackson, so I would choose C, that Jackson's books weighed the most.